They crave your light but fear your truth. A narcissist will never truly respect an empath. Not because the empath is weak, but because the empath sees what the narcissist hides. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this video, we'll explore the deep psychological and spiritual reasons behind this dynamic, why narcissists are drawn to empaths, why they can never truly respect them, and how understanding Jungian psychology can help empaths reclaim their power and peace. Empaths and narcissists are two psychological opposites that often find themselves entangled in a painful yet transformative relationship. The empath feels deeply, absorbs emotions, and seeks harmony. The narcissist hides behind a mask of superiority, using control and manipulation to protect a fragile ego. To the empath, the narcissist appears wounded and misunderstood. To the narcissist, the empath appears endlessly forgiving and emotionally rich, a perfect source of validation. But beneath this attraction lies a deeper truth. The empath represents everything the narcissist represses. And in Jungian terms, that means the empath becomes a narcissist's shadow mirror. Carl Jung's theory of the psyche helps explain this dynamic. He believed that every person has both a conscious self and an unconscious shadow. The shadow contains everything we deny, repress, or refuse to acknowledge about ourselves, our fears, insecurities, and hidden desires. For the narcissist, the shadow is enormous. Their entire identity is built on denying weakness, vulnerability, and shame. They construct a false self, a persona, to appear powerful and superior. But this false self is fragile. It constantly needs validation to survive. When a narcissist meets an empath, they encounter someone who sees beyond the mask. The empath's intuition penetrates the narcissist's defenses, exposing the truth they've spent a lifetime hiding. This is why the narcissist feels both drawn to and threatened by the empath. The empath's gift is emotional awareness. They can sense pain behind arrogance, sadness behind anger, and fear behind control. But this gift often comes from early life experiences, growing up in environments where they had to read emotions to stay safe or loved. This conditioning makes the empath compassionate, but also vulnerable. They believe that love can heal anyone, even those who refuse to change. When they meet a narcissist, they see the wounded child beneath the ego. They think, if I love them enough, they'll heal. But Jung would say this is projection. The empath is projecting their own inner healer onto someone who cannot yet face their own shadow. The empath's compassion becomes a mirror for the narcissist's denial. To understand why a narcissist will never truly respect an empath, we must understand what the narcissist fears most: exposure. The narcissist's entire identity depends on maintaining control and superiority. Respect requires equality, and equality requires vulnerability. But vulnerability is the narcissist's greatest terror. When the empath offers understanding, the narcissist interprets it as weakness. When the empath forgives, the narcissist sees it as permission. When the empath shows love, the narcissist feels threatened, because love demands authenticity. And authenticity is something the narcissist cannot sustain. In Jungian terms, the narcissist is possessed by their persona, the mask they wear to survive. They cannot respect the empath because the empath represents the truth they've buried. At first, the narcissist idealizes the empath. They mirror their kindness, their depth, their sensitivity. This is a love-bombing phase, a psychological illusion designed to hook the empath emotionally. The empath feels seen, valued, and understood. But soon, the mask slips. The narcissist begins to devalue the empath, criticizing, gaslighting, and withdrawing affection. The empath, confused and hurt, tries harder to please them, believing they did something wrong. This is a cycle of control, idealization, devaluation, and discard. The empath's empathy becomes the narcissist's fuel. The more the empath gives, the more the narcissist takes. The empath's light becomes the narcissist's energy source. But deep down, the narcissist despises its dependence. They cannot respect what they secretly envy. Eventually, the empath begins to awaken. They notice the pattern, the emotional highs and lows, the manipulation, the emptiness. They realize that no amount of love can fill the narcissist's void. This realization is painful but liberating. It marks the beginning of individuation, the Jungian process of becoming whole. The empath starts to turn inward, asking, why did I attract this dynamic? What part of me needed to be needed? Through this reflection, the empath begins to integrate their own shadow, the part that seeks validation through saving others. They learn that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. They begin to set limits, speak truth, and honor their own energy. This shift terrifies a narcissist. When the empath stops feeding their ego, the narcissist loses control. The empath's silence becomes power. Part 6. Healing and Transformation. 1 hour and 40 minutes to 1 hour and 55 minutes. Healing from a narcissistic relationship is not about revenge. It's about reclamation. The empath must reclaim their energy, their voice, and their sense of self. This begins with awareness, recognizing manipulation, setting boundaries, and trusting intuition. It continues with self-compassion, understanding that being kind doesn't mean being a savior. Journaling, therapy, and solitude help the empath reconnect with their inner truth. They learn to give from fullness, not emptiness. They rediscover that empathy is not weakness. It's strength guided by wisdom. As Jung taught, integration means embracing both light and shadow. The empath learns to love without losing themselves. They no longer seek validation from those who cannot give it. They become whole. The relationship between an empath and a narcissist is not just psychological, it's spiritual. It's a mirror that reveals what each must learn. The empath learns self-respect. The narcissist, if they ever awaken, learns humility. In Jungian terms, both are called confront their shadows. The empath's shadow is self-abandonment. The narcissist's shadow is self-hatred. When these lessons are integrated, both can evolve, but only if they choose awareness. The narcissist's entire identity is built upon what Jung called a persona, the mask we wear to face the world. For most people, the persona is flexible. It helps us adapt to social roles while staying connected to our authentic self. For the narcissist, however, the persona becomes the only self they know. They construct an image of perfection, superiority, and control to hide deep feelings of inadequacy and shame. This false self is fragile. It constantly needs external validation to survive. When the empath enters their life, the narcissist sees someone who can feed this illusion endlessly. But because the empath's perception penetrates beyond the mask, the narcissist feels both dependent on and threatened by them. Respect becomes impossible because the empath sees a truth the narcissist cannot face. The empath's sensitivity often originates in childhood. Many empaths grew up in emotionally unpredictable environments, homes where they had to sense others' moods to stay safe or loved. They learned to read emotional energy as a survival skill. This early conditioning creates adults who are deeply compassionate, but also prone to self-abandonment. They equate love with caretaking and peace with pleasing others. When they meet a narcissist, this pattern reactivates. The empath's inner child believes, if I can just love them enough, they'll change. But this is the same illusion they lived as children. Try to earn love from someone emotionally unavailable. Healing begins when the empath recognizes this pattern and nurtures their own inner child instead of rescuing others. Jung taught that we see in others what we cannot see in ourselves. This is projection, the unconscious act of attributing our inner qualities to another person. The empath projects their capacity for love and healing onto the narcissist, believing they can awaken their goodness. The narcissist projects their own self-hatred onto the empath, accusing them of being too emotional, too weak, or too demanding. Each becomes a mirror for the other's unconscious. The empath mirrors a narcissist's denied vulnerability. The narcissist mirrors the empath's denied strength. This projection creates a powerful but destructive bond until awareness breaks the illusion. At the beginning, the narcissist idealizes the empath. They shower them with affection, attention, and admiration. This phase feels intoxicating. It's as if the narcissist finally sees the empath's soul. But this idealization is not love. It's possession. The narcissist is not connecting with the empath's true self. They're connecting with the reflection of their own fantasy. Once the empath fails to maintain this fantasy, the narcissist's admiration turns to contempt. The empath is devalued, criticized, and emotionally punished for being human. This cycle repeats until the empath recognizes that love built on illusion can never lead to respect. When the empath begins to see the narcissist's true nature, the illusion collapses. The narcissist's charm fades, their words lose power, and their manipulation becomes transparent. This collapse triggers what Jung called the death of the persona, a psychological crisis where the false self begins to crumble. For the narcissist, this feels like annihilation. They respond with rage, blame, or withdrawal to avoid facing their inner emptiness. For the empath, this collapse is painful but liberating. It marks the beginning of awakening, the moment they stop seeing the narcissist as a wounded soul and start seeing them as a mirror of their own unhealed patterns. Jung believed that we are magnetically drawn to people who embody our unconscious. The empath's light calls to the narcissist's darkness, and the narcissist's intensity calls to the empath's hidden shadow. The empath's shadow often contains suppressed anger, boundaries, and self-assertion. The narcissist's shadow contains vulnerability, empathy, and authenticity. Each unconsciously seeks what the other represses. This attraction is not random. It's the psyche's attempt to achieve balance. But without awareness, this balance becomes chaos. The relationship becomes a battlefield between light and shadow, truth and illusion. The narcissist feeds on emotional energy. They thrive on attention, admiration, and even conflict. To them, emotional reactions, positive or negative, are proof of control. The empath, being emotionally open, becomes an endless source of energy. Over time, the empath feels drained, anxious, and disconnected from themselves. This is not metaphorical. It's energetic depletion. Jung would describe it as psychic inflation on one side and psychic depletion on the other. The narcissist inflates their ego by consuming the empath's emotional vitality. The empath must learn to protect their energy through boundaries and detachment. The narcissist persona is rigid and performative. They live for appearances, status, admiration, and control. The empath's persona, however, is adaptive and fluid. They adjust others' needs, often losing touch with their own identity. This difference creates imbalance. The narcissist demands admiration. The empath offers understanding. The narcissist hides behind a mask. The empath dissolves theirs to connect. True respect cannot exist between a mask and a mirror. Only authenticity can create equality, and authenticity is what the narcissist fears most. Both empath and narcissist share a hidden fear of abandonment. The empath fears losing love. The narcissist fears losing control. This shared fear binds them together in a toxic loop. The empath overgives to avoid rejection. The narcissist manipulates to avoid vulnerability. Each is trying to fill an inner void through the other. Jung would call this a complex, an emotional knot formed by unresolved childhood experiences. Healing requires facing this fear directly and realizing that true connection cannot come from fear. It must come from wholeness. Boundaries are the empath's greatest lesson. Without them, empathy becomes enslavement. The empath must learn that saying no is not cruelty, it's self-respect. Boundaries protect energy, preserve identity, and create space for authentic connection. The narcissist tests boundaries constantly because boundaries threaten their control. When the empath enforces them, the narcissist reacts with anger or withdrawal. But this reaction is proof of growth. It means the empath is no longer feeding the narcissist's illusion. At the core of narcissism lies emptiness, a disconnection from the true self. This void is a result of early emotional neglect or trauma. The narcissists learn that love is conditional, so they build a false self to earn it. But no amount of admiration can fill this void. It's a psychological black hole that consumes everything around it. The empath's love temporarily soothes it, but never heals it. Only self-awareness and shadow integration can. Until then, the narcissist remains trapped in an endless cycle of seeking and destroying love. The empath's shadow is a part of them that fears rejection, avoids conflict, and seeks validation through helping others. To integrate this shadow, the empath must confront uncomfortable truths. They are not responsible for saving anyone. Their worth is not measured by how much they give. Their compassion must include themselves. Shadow work means reclaiming the parts of the self that were silenced: anger, assertiveness, and self-trust. When the empath integrates these traits, they become balanced, capable of love without losing themselves. The empath surrenders, the narcissist controls. This dance is unconscious, a repetition of old emotional patterns. The empath confuses surrender with love, believing that giving more will create harmony. The narcissist confuses control with safety, believing that dominance prevents rejection. Both are trapped in illusion. True connection requires mutual surrender to truth, not control. When the empath stops surrendering their power, the dance ends. This relationship mirrors the archetype of the wounded healer. The empath tries to heal the narcissist, unaware that they are reenacting their own wound. The narcissist, the eternal wounded child, resists healing because it threatens their identity. Jung taught that the healer must first heal themselves. When the empath turns their healing inward, they break the archetypal cycle and transform pain into wisdom. On a societal level, the empath-narcissist dynamic reflects humanity's collective shadow. We live in a world that glorifies power, image, and control, while devaluing empathy and authenticity. The narcissist represents the collective ego. The empath represents the collective soul. Their conflict mirrors the tension between materialism and spirituality, domination and compassion. Healing this dynamic on a personal level contributes to healing it collectively. Dreams are the language of the unconscious. For the empath, dreams often reveal the truth of the relationship long before the conscious mind accepts it. Recurring dreams of being chased, trapped, or drained symbolize a psychic entanglement. Dreams of breaking free, flying, or finding light symbolize awakening. Jung encouraged dream journaling as a way to dialogue with the unconscious. Through dreams, the empath's psyche guides him toward liberation. Pain is a catalyst for transformation. Jung believed that suffering forces the ego to confront the unconscious. The empath's heartbreak becomes a doorway to individuation, the process of becoming whole. Through pain, they discover strength, boundaries, and self-awareness. They realize that love without self-respect is not love, it's self-abandonment. Pain becomes purpose when it leads to awakening. The narcissist resists change because change requires self-confrontation. Their identity depends on denial. To face their shadow would mean admitting imperfection, vulnerability, and guilt. This threatens a false self they've built for survival, until they experience a deep psychological crisis, what Jung called a night sea journey. They remain trapped in illusion. The empath must accept that they cannot awaken someone who refuses to see. Liberation begins when the empath stops trying to be understood and starts understanding themselves. They detach with love, not hatred. They stop explaining, defending, and proving their worth. They realize that silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. In this space of detachment, the empath reconnects with their intuition, creativity, and peace. They no longer seek respect from those incapable of giving it. The final stage is reunion with the true self. The empath reclaims their energy, their boundaries, and their joy. They integrate their shadow, embrace their strength, and embody balance. They no longer define themselves by others' wounds. They become whole, an individual who loves deeply but wisely. This is the essence of Jungian individuation, the journey from illusion to authenticity, from projection to self-realization. A narcissist will never truly respect an empath, because respect requires truth, and truth is what the empath embodies. But when the empath stops seeking validation and starts honoring their own energy, the cycle ends. The empath becomes sovereign, no longer a mirror for others, but a light for themselves. As Carl Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. The empath's awakening begins the moment they stop trying to heal others and start healing themselves. The empath's awakening begins the moment they stop trying to heal others and start healing themselves. But this awakening is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a new way of being. When the empath steps into their power, they no longer view their sensitivity as a curse, but as a sacred gift. They understand that empathy, when guided by wisdom, becomes discernment. They no longer absorb the pain of the world. They witness it with compassion and respond with clarity. They learn that love is not about losing oneself in another. It's about standing firmly in one's truth while extending kindness without expectation. In this state of awareness, the empath becomes what Jung might call an individuated soul, a person who has united the conscious and unconscious, the light and the shadow. They no longer seek wholeness through others because they have found it within. Their relationships transform from dependency to mutual respect, from projection to presence. They attract people who resonate with their authenticity, rather than those who feed on their energy. The narcissist, meanwhile, remains trapped in the endless cycle of illusion until they, too, are forced to confront their shadow. And though the empath cannot save them, their example of self-awareness becomes a silent invitation for others to awaken. In this way, the empath becomes a quiet teacher, not through preaching, but through being. On a collective level, this transformation ripples outward. As more individuals awaken to their inner truth, society begins to shift. Empathy, once dismissed as weakness, becomes recognized as strength. Authenticity replaces performance. Connection replaces control. The collective shadow begins to dissolve as humanity learns to balance power with compassion, intellect with intuition, and ambition with soul. The empath's journey, then, is not just personal, it's archetypal. It represents the evolution of human consciousness itself. The movement from ego to essence, from domination to unity. Every empath who chooses self-awareness contributes to this evolution. Every act of self-respect becomes an act of healing for the collective psyche. And so, the story ends where it truly begins, with awareness. Awareness that love without boundaries is not love. Awareness that compassion without truth is self-betrayal. Awareness that the greatest act of empathy is to honor your own soul first. When the empath lives from this awareness, they no longer fear the narcissist's shadow, because they have made peace with their own. They walk through the world not as victims of energy, but as masters of it, calm, grounded, and awake. They embody what Jung called the self, the totality of being, where light and darkness coexist in harmony. And in that harmony lies true freedom. The freedom to love without losing yourself. The freedom to see without judgment. The freedom to live as a whole, conscious, and sovereign soul. As we come to the end of this reflection, take a moment to breathe and let these ideas settle within you. If you've ever found yourself in the empath, narcissist dynamic, know that your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's your strength. It's the part of you that feels deeply, loves sincerely, and sees truth where others see illusion. Carl Jung believed that the path to wholeness is not about escaping darkness, but about walking through it with awareness. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every moment of confusion has been guiding you toward yourself. You are not broken. You are becoming. And in that becoming, you are learning the most sacred lesson of all, that peace is not found in being understood by others, but in understanding yourself. So, as you move forward, carry this awareness with you. Let your empathy be guided by wisdom, your compassion balanced by boundaries, and your love rooted in truth. You are not here to fix others. You are here to embody light, to live authentically, and to inspire through presence. The world needs your sensitivity, but also needs your strength. When you honor both, you become a living example of what Jung called individuation, the union of opposites, the harmony of soul and self. Thank you for walking through this journey with me, for listening, and for allowing these words to resonate in your own inner world. Until next time, take care of what is truly yours.